grip destabilization. Take your grips however you would like, I don't really care. Right. I want some form of connection, this person to be connected to me. All right, I don't care if it's like this, wrist, etc. I want the connection. Whatever connection they have, I can also affect them by doing motion, right? I can also attach when I do these motions and then shoot or go, right? What we're gonna look at is destabilizing these grips, basically, almost like we would grip break. If we see how most of this gripping goes for E, if we just punch our hand forward, most of the time this grip is nothing, right? So the only grip that's actually holding me is this grip. So if I take it to the outside, the reason why we did wrist locks is because now you can see how that's super easy to affect. Now this is just showing how I can break the gripping, right? I'm destabilizing the gripping, right? Coming over, right? See how I could attack? Yeah. See how I am not being controlled, right? I used the gripping that they took, right, to basically pre-position them into a position of failure, right? So whatever grips they take, I don't really care, right? We can look at how we're going to break them down, right, and utilize the grips that they took to establish better gripping, right? But we have to understand the principles of grips, right? How a grip works, where its weak point, right? We've gone over this before. We always attack grips at the opening, right? If my hand is like this, the weakest part of any grip here would be here, right? If my hands are closed, the weakest point of the chain will typically be my thumb. I do say typically because it's not always. If I cover my own thumb like this, now there's an opening. People will think they're being sneaky, right? And they'll do the 2-on-1, but then they'll cover their own thumb with their palm, right? But then they have an opening in their hand, right? So you have to attack the grip where it's weakest, right? And this has to do with a little bit of knowledge and understanding, right? But then we're also going to look at how we can make a grip unfunctional, right? So if I'm holding him like this and my elbow gets raised, this does nothing. Am I holding on to anything? No, my hand's just kind of there, right? It's just there, not really providing an actual function, right? If he's gripped like this, and all of a sudden his wrist gets bent, his posture changes, right? Where his grip is now on the underside, right? We can affect this elbow more than just lifting it, right? If we just lift the elbow, cool, it can still be a fist and strong, right? But it doesn't actually provide any function, right? And then same thing on the underside. If we put the elbow too far to the center line, right, this grip does nothing. So we're looking to achieve certain goals to basically dismantle grips and put his body in a faction where his grips are no longer functional, right? Because even a weird grip, you take a weird grip like this, right? How do I make it non-functional? You see that we can touch the elbow, all right? Well, can I do it a different way? Is this grip providing a function? Not really. Does you make sense? Tracking? Right. This applies to rear naked, anything of that fashion. Any position that we're looking at a grip to include the closed grip, right? How do we affect it, right? If I can peel an elbow, this grip is no longer, right, being a strong connection. Even if I connect again, right? And he changes the elbow alignment again. Does that make sense? Okay, so when we're looking at grips, if we can affect how a grip functions, aka how long it is, right? I can press him away, air quote, I can make this too long for him to stay connected. I'm gonna press it harder, okay. Makes sense? All right, we can affect by causing these elbows to either peel up, right? You see how now I can drop down. You see how his fingers are the clasp, right? Or in this like gable gripping, I'm assuming you're in gable
Yeah,
grip,
yeah.
right? Gable grips are very weak to twisting, right? So if I was here and I started to twist his arm, right, these grips start to lose their function, right? And then I can all of this has to do with basically destroying whatever grip gets taken in a way that just makes it non-functional. So he's just tried to lift my elbow, right? But this is not going to change the dynamic of the grip. Where if he was to collapse the elbow, now, because it's also wedged on his body, it's trapped, but it's going to cause almost like a break in the wrist, as we would do for these wrist locks, right? We're not strong in these positions. We're trying to achieve these positions without breaking someone's wrist, basically. They're going to take the grip, right? And if I peel someone's elbow, right, and I can get on top of their wrist, right? Now this grip, do something with this grip, can you?
Oh yeah, that's pull and push, but it's not.
And then as soon as I do something of this fashion,
Yeah.
can you do it now?
No, I can let
Small
go.
difference, right? But a big one, right? And it was just because his wrist went from being in a steady, strong position where we could still do a pulling motion to being here. And that slight difference will determine whether or not he can pull and push. Because he ain't pushing, I assure you that. He might pull, but he's got to pull to get his arm out. Does that make sense? Okay. So we did wrist locks for a reason, right? We did wrist locks so we could get a better mechanical understanding of how we want this wrist to actuate, right? I want this wrist to do that motion, right? Boom, right? Now, I can accomplish this in many different fashions. Does that make sense? Perfect. Play around with that. Grip destabilization, right? Or affecting the grip to making it where it's not functional, right? Now, we're going to talk about making functional grips. We can see that it's very hard to affect grips, or harder, once they are closed, right? When they are closed in isolation with each other, that means they're doubly supported by each other, and they can both articulate and change, right? This is a closed grip. My grip is being supported by his belt, right? But both things only articulate so much as his belt is loose. Does that make sense? Right? If I was holding this articulates only as much as his cloth moves, right? My hand, I can articulate all over, right? That means it's able to change in different grippings, right? I can literally let go and reform different grips, right? So if we can close grips around a person, this is what we want to do. And then we're going to climb them like a rope, right? So this is what we're going to look at trying to achieve, right? You're going to do those kinds of grip fights. You're going to destabilize other people's grips that they have on you, and you're going to close your grips around them. We're going to take them to the floor, and then we're going to climb them, right? We're going to make the assumption that we get anywhere close to either one leg to the ground, right? Quarter guard, whatever the fuck you want to call it, etc. Right, I'm sorry, not quarter guard, headquarters, etc. We're just going to take them to the floor. I don't really care how. Body lock, or something of this fashion, right? And when we're here, we're going to start to work our way up the body. Does that make sense? We're going to work to close our grip on someone. This is my first closed grip. I'm going to take. Then I'm going to try to make another closed grip around his body. Once that closed grip is formed, I will let go of his grip. I'll make another closed grip. Another closed grip. Until I've done my climb. Does that make sense? Put a hat on me. Put the hats on. Now, how you close your grips, I really don't care. If it's just like this, touching, closing, right? I don't care if it's this, right, with your feet. Go from open grips to closed grips. Does that make sense? I know it seems rather basic, right? But if you watch a lot of people while they're doing their jiu-jitsu, they have very open gripping, right? They'll grip each other and they're always open in their grips. and they're wondering why they can't hold people, right? Well, this becomes infinitely easier to hold him. I close my grip. You see, I went from one closed grip to one closed grip. I only moved once I had a closed grip.
Climb me like a snake.
Climb them like the ropes, right? How do you climb a rope? You don't just fucking let go and be like, I can hold it with one hand. Good luck. I'm not that strong. Never been that strong in my life. Also, cause I'm a bitch, but that's beside the point, right? Try that. Give it a go. You saw how we were making it a very slow, incremental climb to death, right? But the reason why these are working is in gaining a type of inside position each time I take it, right? If I just wrapped around like this, and I was like, I'm gonna hold this. Well, one, I'm not past his knees, so if he just pulls his knees towards his chest, I don't limit his ability, right? So each one of my grips that I'm taking that are closed have to be meaningful, right? A small joint that I can wrap around is still very meaningful. This could suck, couldn't it?
Yep.
This is a submission, right? But even if I just did this, this closed grip causes a very forced reaction, right? Because it's around something small. I can overload it with my body. Now, if I had both, right? And I did that, much less effect, right? However, this also still has the added ability that I understand that I can climb his body, right? I'm gonna keep the closed grip, right? However you wanna keep it closed, right? And I'll climb the body. Now I have a different closed grip. He kicks away to basically either break this gripping. It's pretty hard, right? I can take a different closed gripping. Does that make sense? This is where that articulation of our hands becomes very important, right? We're looking to make incremental increases. He's making to basically attack my grip, right? So if I was just being silly, right? I was like, I'm gonna attack like this, right? He's like, oh, I'm going to basically attack the gripping, right? Now that my gripping is open, right? My grip is weak. Does that make sense? See how he's very open, all his grips are very weak. The position is not dominant, right? And then I come into a position where my grips are closed, and I'm in the dominant position. Make sense? We're always looking to win the grip fight, because all jiu-jitsu is a grip fight, right? It just boils down to how far we've gotten into it and how far we've won, right? If I'm strictly moving up his body, right? And there's a measurement of how successful I've been, basically, of the grip fight, then we have a strong indicator, right, of how successful you are at this current moment, right? If here is 0, being wrapped around his neck is 10. Does that make sense? Yeah. Very basic way of thinking about it, right? There's also obviously things that skip it, right? But these aren't the highest level that you can get, right? We went to like a 5, right? We went to like a 7. Does that make sense? But the best thing I can get is wrapped around his neck, right? With nothing in between me and his neck. That's what we're getting to, right? So when we start climbing, right, we're looking to grip in a fashion, right? Then now, you see I have the inside positioning. Connected grips, inside positioning, walking up, inside positioning on both, we can break. Now, how do I get to his neck? Since we just said that was number 10, right? We're gonna walk him up, isolate to one side, right? Just like I'm gonna keep my grips closed all this time so I can stay open. Here, close gripping, close gripping, right? If this is not here, close gripping. Making sense? Let's see you do it.